And I didn't allow chat, so we're good.
Great.
Let me send out on remind.
Unit 1 review had 354 views. Unit 2, 246.
Wow.
We dropped by 100.
I wonder how many parents watched the live lesson.
I'm sure there are some.
Oh man, we already got 24 people. Look at that. We're trying to get through this quick. I'm going to give, I think 5 minutes is enough to give people to join because they can always go back and watch what they missed.
Have you started?
Yeah.
Oh, I would say less than that. Like
Come on.
3 minutes. Let's get it going.
Get your headphones in. Let's do it. Or I guess you don't need your headphones in.
No.
You don't even need to watch the video.
No.
Why didn't we think of that?
I know. I thought of it this week. We're good to go this week.
We're good. We're getting better at it, kids. Welcome, everybody. We got 41 people. Got 2 likes. Smash that like button. Yes. Make me money, maybe. I'll get a check from YouTube for $1. And then I can say I'm a YouTube star. Monetize. Ooh, 17 likes. 46 people.
I can't get you that $1.
I swear, if you didn't, or you're not watching, you can't smash like.
I am watching. I can hit the like button.
Yes. 22 likes. Whoa, we almost have a 50% like rating. 51 people to 25 likes. That's pretty good. I'm over 50%. This is incredible. This is absolutely incredible, people. We are truly doing something amazing. If we only have like 50 people show up to this, I would be upset. I had a student. Yeah, I know live chat is disabled. We did that on purpose for this reason. So how about this? We'll talk about updates while we wait for people, and they can watch these afterward. So week 2 is done. To my students, I don't know if Ms. Green feels the same way, but my students, you've absolutely been crushing it. You show up, you get your stuff. If I reach out to you, you respond. You guys are doing a great job. Really proud of you holding all this stuff down. Green, do you want to say anything to your students? Like, do they need to get it together, or are they doing a good job?
Yeah, the majority of you guys are right on track with everything. You guys are doing great.
Okay. We know that we have the AP exam on the 11th. They're going to be practicing how to upload your written responses. You can write responses however you want. You can do it on a piece of paper, take a picture and upload that. You can type it on the computer and upload that document. They're giving you options. So whatever you feel stronger doing. And like I said, they're going to practice it with you. We know that it's going to be 2 FRQs. 25 minutes is one, 15 minutes is the other. The first FRQ is going to have 2 stimulus. The second FRQ is going to have 1. Honestly, pretty awesome to have stimulus because you know it's going to go back to that. So you can always reference those stimulus when you're writing. Probably going to score some easy points doing that. Definitely got to pay attention to the stimulus, know how to read your maps because it's probably going to be maps or charts. Once again, you only get 25 minutes and 15 minutes. So they're really limiting the amount of time that you have to reference outside materials that you shouldn't be referencing. So that is a good thing. Beside that, oh, sorry, cut myself off there. I don't know any other things we want to say about the AP exam. Anything from you, Ms. Green? No?
Nope.
Okay. Also, up the last week before the AP exam, I know that we've only been requiring about 1 video a week, but I think I'm going to make opportunities for more video conferencing, maybe through other platforms to focus on specific tutoring, skill building, stuff like that. Not going over content anymore, but focusing on FRQ writing so we can have you prepared for the AP exam. But I think that's enough. We have a good amount of people here. I wish we had more. Hurts my soul. As always, make sure to like and subscribe to my channel and for students, for my students, Mr. Bear's students afterward, you will have that one question SB quiz so I can know that you're doing okay, or if you need help with anything. I do respond to that. If you left any comments or had any questions, I did respond to those, and I still have to respond to more of them. All right, you ready to go over this?
Wait, I want to see something real quick.
Sure.
Don't forget for my students that you have until Sunday night to submit your one higher order thinking question for me to take attendance for you watching the video. Make sure that you get that in on time. Moving forward, I am going to start taking on points for any late work. Yep, that's it.
Yeah, and I mean, same with me. I gave you guys 3 days. I was even more lenient than that because I think I posted the EDSB this week reminding you to make sure to take it because I know it can get lost in the feed. But now that we're moving into our third week of e-learning, the expectations are going to be a little more concrete on due dates and stuff like that and expectations for you. But also, anytime, guys, if you have any issues, please message either one of us and we can work with you. But we do want to start holding you a little more accountable in the upcoming weeks. I think that's fair to say. Right, Green?
Yep, and same thing for quality of work too. I don't think Mr. Bayer and I are grading every single question, but we are randomly grading some questions to make sure that you're on the right track with everything.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, going through 100 something graded assignments and there's 2 of them, there's no way I can read that all. And there's no way Ms. Green can read that all. So we are randomly going through and then checking random ones. Because remember, this is review. This is at this time, we can't cover content anymore and make sure that you're getting it right. And especially in this weird situation we're in, it's very much on your responsibility to make sure that you are holding yourself accountable because you want to pass this AP exam. You want to get this college credit. You want to get this free money, right? And with the AP exam, I don't want to say that there's going to be more people that pass, but I definitely think there's going to be more leniency involved in the AP exam this year. Why waste the opportunity when you have so much time available to you? Now, I know not everybody has the time and the perfect situation, and I know things are going on that are unique to everybody at home. But really hold yourself accountable here to make sure that you can get this stuff done so you can benefit from it, right? Like, let's use this opportunity to get as much as we can out of it as possible. All right, so on to the review. What we're going to do, I'm not going to go through all the answers in the packet. We're going to post that to EDSB. It's really simple vocab, matching it. Not going to go through all that. I am going to discuss the multiple choice questions. And when I'm going over the multiple choice questions, feel free to message me or Ms. Green on Remind. And then when we get to the end, I'll go back through all of your questions. Okay? Sound good, Green?
Yep.
Cool. And now I got the hiccups. What an awful time. Horrible time. Okay, so looking at 1, it says geographers might characterize a place as overpopulated, and the answer here is B. The population numbers less than 1 million, but there is concern about the country's natural resources are adequate for only half that number. Look, they threw a lot of numbers at this, and there's no numerical threshold or standard where it goes, oh, overpopulated. All it means is that you do not have the resources to feed that population. That's what overpopulation means. And in chapter 2, we looked a lot at demographics. And I mean, the reason why we do is to make sure that we don't have a country that's overpopulated. And if we do, what are we going to change about the environment to make sure that everybody has access to those resources? All right, and on to 2, given patterns of development and where people live within specific regions, we might expect to find a lower proportion of farmers living in which of these areas. So now it's giving you regions throughout the world. So not only do you have to know your regions and regions of development, you have to be able to tie to agricultural density. And where are we going to see lower agricultural densities? Generally in developed areas. So from this list, we have to go, which one is the most developed? And we would argue that it would be Southeast Europe compared to the other ones. Now, is it the most developed region in the world? No, not by far. But of the choices that we have, it is the most developed. So really important here to understand your regions. All right, rapidly declining, I'm looking at number 3, by the way. Number 3, rapidly declining crude birth rate or crude death rates are found in which stage of the demographic transition? Can't reiterate enough how important it is to understand your demographic transition model, because we can use it for every other part of this class. And knowing what each stage does uniquely and where that was is absolutely critical for the AP exam. So where do we see these death rates drop? We first see the huge plummet in stage 2, which causes that huge population explosion. And we see that spike of total fertility rates and stuff like that. Anything you want to add, Ms. Green, so far, or can I keep moving on?
Yep, it's great.
Cool. All right, looking at number 4, if your ancestors migrated to the United States during the 40s and 50s of the 1800s, barring any other evidence, where'd they come from? This goes back to the migration trends into the United States. We know that they were majorly based on economic opportunity and as a result of demographic changes in the countries that they came from. So social and economic we're looking at here. But we know based on the trends of migration into the United States that they probably came from Ireland and Germany, Northwest Europe, because they had just experienced the Industrial Revolution. They went through stage 2. You have a whole lot of people, you don't have enough jobs, and it's really densely populated in these areas, so they leave for the New World. Then we get to 5 leading approaches to reducing birth rates, emphasize the long-term benefits of what? Guys, we have hammered this idea through multiple units, and it's absolutely critical that you understand. Countries develop when women have more opportunities. And then we can relate that idea to each chapter uniquely, because when we talk about women getting more opportunities in education, well, how do we relate that to demographics? Well, now we're gonna start to see total fertility rates start to drop. And when total fertility rates start to drop, that means people are shifting into other sectors of employment. They're going in, they have more money available to them, they have more resources, and they have a better infant mortality rate because they're lowering it with access to healthcare, all of this stuff that we've hammered and talked about. So our answer here is D. And I know that's kind of a rant when you're talking about this stuff, but that's because it's so interconnected to everything else. So if you improve economic conditions, you make sure that women are educated, then you're going to start seeing the birth rate start to drop because women are doing things outside the traditional home. That's what we always have to remember. Moving on to 6, we can calculate that a country would raise or increase its physiological density by what? Okay, physiological density is people to arable land. And if you want that number to go up, you either have to drop the amount of arable land you have, or you have to increase the amount of people. Well, decreasing the arable land isn't there, so our only answer here is D. And then looking at 7, from the discussions of demographic changes within the United States, we can deduce that the largest level of interregional migration in the US was caused by, and this is kind of a strange question. I know it's kind of like US history based, but it is D, opening up the Western territories. That's why we have shifted. When we talked about the population center in the United States, we have said that the center of the US population is in the center of the United States. But that's not because everybody lives in the middle section of the US, like no one lives there. It's that we have so many people on each coast that are taking up, we have both coasts with so many people that it's pulling our population center to the center, if that makes sense. All right, on to question 8, real simple, just looking at birth and death rates. You have the birth rate of 40, crude death rate of 15. What stage of the demographic transition? Easy, stage 2. To be stage 1, they would both have to be 40. To be stage 3, you would have a much lower birth rate. It would be closer to that death rate. To be stage 4, the death rate and birth rate both have to be low and just about matching. And then finally, stage 5 would have to be a negative birth rate or a birth rate under the death rate. And I'm going to take a second here to talk about the coronavirus because multiple students have asked me, Mr. Bear, aren't we in stage 5 where you have these diseases that are dropping the birth rate lower than the death rate? Where the death rate's above the birth rate. Coronavirus isn't impactful enough to have a constant, sustained death rate that's above the birth rate. In the United States, we have, I think last year had 2.8 million deaths, and the coronavirus has killed just over 10,000 people in the United States. That's not enough to keep the death rate above the birth rate. Are we seeing a blip? Yes, but it's not consistent enough like HIV/AIDS to say that, yes, we're in stage 5. Or in fact, I think it would be better to ask the question, could the coronavirus send us back in the demographic transition model? Because stage 5 is more about declining birth rates. Like our birth rates have dropped so low. A virus that exponentially jumps our death rate would make us think, are we going back? If that makes sense. Does that make sense, Ms. Green?
Yep.
Okay, cool. But yeah, interesting to think about students who've thought about it. Good for you, connecting stuff. That's awesome. All right, 9, according to the United Nations High Commission of Refugees, the largest number of refugees that were forced to migrate in recent years are from where? Well, we know that the largest refugee crisis is from Syria in history. No ifs, ands, or buts, but that's not on here. So then we have to think to ourselves, okay, what regions have massive amounts of refugees? Has Vietnam and Indonesia? Yeah, the Vietnam War caused a lot, but not that much. Randomly, Sudan, South Africa, and Colombia are lumped together. Why would they lump together countries from different regions? That doesn't make any sense. Mexico and Colombia, no, they're kind of high developing countries. And we haven't heard of anything happening in Ethiopia, Nicaragua, and Somalia. And that too is different continents. So the only one that really makes sense here is B, with Afghanistan and Iraq. So no questions on that. And then looking at 10, according to the epidemiological transition model, when do vaccines and improved sanitation cause the death rate to decrease? Best answer, stage 3, but I would argue it. I think the question could be phrased a little bit better, maybe to say, what type of country, because remember, the developing world moved to stage 2 because of access to healthcare, sanitation, and vaccines from the developed world. So while the developed world most certainly moved to stage 3 because of vaccines and improved sanitation, that happened. But we know that the developing world moved to stage 2 because of these things. So I don't think we'll see something this vague, especially because it's written. And if you explain that in an FRQ, you get all the points. All right, 11, which is the most common negative impact of immigration on a country of origin? And that would be D, loss of working age population to another country. That's that whole idea of brain drain, if they're skilled. But the fact is, you don't want to lose young, able-bodied people who can work in all sectors of employment from a country, because you need those people to work. You need those people to make money and stuff like that. But then at the end of the day, if the jobs aren't there, if the money's not good enough, you really can't control what people do, and people will migrate. And if I'm moving too fast, please, Ms. Green, if you could stop me, or if you get any questions or anything on your end.
Okay.
Question 12, which of the following countries is at stage 2 of the demographic transition model? That would be Nigeria. All the other countries are in stage 3, 4, or 5. Then a rectangular shaped population pyramid indicates a country that is A, growing slowly or not at all. Because remember, they have a total fertility rate of 2.1. They're in stage 4 of the demographic transition model. Their birth rates and death rates have effectively met at the lower end of the demographic transition model, and their population pyramid reflects that. Basically, people leaving the game got the same amount of people coming into the game. So don't want to get confused on our population pyramids. All right, moving to 14, which of the following countries would expect to have the densest population? Remember, density is based off population and size of the area. Belgium is a very tiny country, so it's going to be the most densely populated, but it's not the most populated. That's the difference, right? We know that other countries on that list probably have a higher population than Belgium, but we're talking about population density. And we can also throw in scale of analysis when we talk about this, because if we're talking about population density, scale matters. Because if we're looking at the country as a whole, places like Mexico, places like China have a very low density if we're looking at the entire country compared to Belgium. But if we zoom in on the megacities, on the urban areas in these countries, and I know I'm going into Unit 6 a little bit, the population density changes because we've changed our scale of analysis. And if we've looked at the cities, then the population densities would be a lot closer together, and that would be a harder question to answer. But because we're looking at the country as a whole, it's easy to put together. And also we could talk about concentration too, because we know the concentrations in the major cities. Anyway. All right, 15, most migrants in the United States during the peak of the late 19th century came from which part of Europe? Guys, we already asked this question. We just phrased it differently. The end of the 19th century is the 1800s. We're still seeing this first wave of migrants into the United States, so north and west. We don't see that second peak until literally 1900 and on to like the 1940s. That's that second peak, or the early 20th century. So don't get confused by the years versus the century that it's in. All right, over the past century, the population of the world has growing even though fertility rate is decreasing. And I know that seems strange, A for 16, but you have to think about it. All throughout the world, total fertility rates are dropping, but they're still above 2.1. And we still have a large population around the world, especially in those developing countries. Even if they have a total fertility rate of 3 or 4, that's still lower than like 8 and 7, but we're still going to see population growth because we aren't at that 2.1 number. 17, which of the following countries is most likely showing the lowest natural increase rate? That would be D, Japan. 18, the population of developed countries can be described as having D, lower natural increase rate than underdeveloped countries. Just went over that and why. 19, all of the following are examples of forced migration except. I feel like this was a really straightforward, easy migration question. Forced is bad and something terrible is happening. So which one is not terrible and bad would be C, the California gold rush, because people just wanted to go out there and make that money. And then finally, zero population growth is attained when a country's crude birth rate and crude death rate are the same. That would be D. So now is the time where we'll take your questions 1 through 20. My phone blew up during this, so I'm going to check oh my goodness, there's so many remind questions. All right, so first we're going to question 4. Would it be Norway and England? Okay, so that was northeast, but we didn't have any migrants from Norway. So this is where history comes into it a little bit, because regionally, you're absolutely correct. That is the northwest part of Europe, but we didn't have any Norwegian migrants into the United States. So that's where you kind of have to know the specific countries and why Ireland and Germany is the correct answer. Good question, good question. All right, checking through. I apologize, everybody. Okay, I will address concerns with the AP exam at the end of this. All right, we're looking at question 10 now. And once again, this brings up exactly what I thought too. A student asked, wait, sanitation is stage 2. Well, what's important about this is that it's including vaccines and improved sanitation once again. Just because in stage 2 that we started practicing sanitation and putting our poops into sewers and stuff like that, yes, that's in sanitation, but the key word here is vaccines. And that's not established till stage 3 of the epidemiological transition. Good question. All right. Anything else?
I answered mine, so we're good.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Well, I'm going to move on to the next part. If you still have questions about multiple choice, I will gladly answer them on Remind. And for my students that sent me Remind messages, I will read those at the end. That's not about review, but just general AP questions, because I'm sure other people have the same exact questions. All right. So now we're going to move on to the FRQs. Bring that up on my laptop here. Thought I had it ready. Such a shame. Right. So just like the other assignment, this will be posted to EDSB, so you can check your answers or write down or just save it for yourself. Because these are past questions, what Ms. Green came up with, it was a great idea. Instead of just one FRQ, we're going to pick parts of multiple FRQs to not only cover content, but just to get you thinking a little bit more and not loading you or overloading you on work. So the first one we looked at was population age 65 or older in 2000 versus 2050. And we were looking at primarily developed countries, developed regions of the world. And the two questions posed were, what are the social consequences of countries' projected population changes? And what are the economic consequences? So very important that you pay attention to what they are specifically asking, because they are asking about social. So you cannot write anything about environment, anything about money or politics. It has to be concerned with social things. Now, those social things can bleed into others, but you really have to hone in on social. So some of the social changes that are going to happen in these countries are, we have the changing roles of the children and elders. Elder people in society need to be taken care of, and the adult children are going to be there to take care of them. We have increased gray power. That just means that senior citizens, the older population, are going to vote a lot more. They're home all the time. They have nothing else to do. So they're going to go out and they're going to vote, and government is going to pay more attention to those old people because they do actually go out and vote. We're going to see increased immigration into these countries. We know that they have a problem filling jobs that people don't want to do because they are developed countries, especially because they still need those people to fulfill those jobs. So you are going to see an increase in immigration, but what social consequence of that are we going to see? Because what I mentioned was economic. What you're going to see is that changing diversity in a country because of all these immigrants. We're going to see changes in housing. We're going to start seeing housing made for senior citizens, more assisted living places. We're going to see a decline in services for the youth because there's not as many of them compared to the aging population. So why offer those services? And one of those things that you would see, for example, are schools, daycares, stuff like that is going to be cut back because they need to focus on helping the older population. You're going to see social conflict between the generations. The old people are going to fight with the young people. The young people are going to say, hey, you're leaving the game soon. Why are you voting so much? Why are you making so many decisions that are going to affect me? And old people are going, I'm still here. I'm still paying taxes. I'm still going to make decisions. Just because you can't go out and vote or you don't have time doesn't matter. We're going to see accessibility change. We got to think about those old people. Their knees maybe not work as well. Maybe they need more assistance in getting in and out of places. So structurally or infrastructurally, you're going to see places change. And then finally, you're going to see pro-natalist policy. And I know that is a government thing, but AP put it under their rubric. And I guess it's because it's affecting society or the people specifically, because it's literally trying to get them to have more babies. All right, so what are our economic consequences specifically? And we're going to fly through these. There's a lot less of them. Obviously, the first one is the increased cost on having that aging population. The fact is that we need to find money to take care of these people because they can't work till the day they die. That's the point of the elderly dependency ratios, that we're going to take care of them. So you're going to see an increased cost to government funding with things like Medicare, housing, accessibility, pensions, Social Security. All those things are going to go into taking care of old people, which means more money is going to be taxed from those young people to make sure they can take care of the older people. And with that, there's going to be an increased economic pressure on the labor force. You have to sustain the economy, but if they have less people because their total fertility rates have dropped and they can't replace those people that are leaving the game, puts a lot more stress on the economy to perform with less people, which then goes into a labor shortage of people. Now that we have this labor shortage, we either have to, we have to do certain things. We either have to hire old people or we have to take in more migrants. That's the options you get. You have a change in employment opportunities. We're going to start seeing more and more senior-based employment, like what jobs can senior citizens do because there's just more of them, versus employment aimed at youth because there's not enough youth. And then more economic pressure on the adult children. We mentioned them before, that there's going to be this sudden increase in society and adult children taking care of elderly. But that's also an economic impact on those kids because now they have to stay at home and maybe take care of those parents, or they have to spend their money taking care of those parents. And that puts a lot of strain on them economically. Anything you'd like to add from that, Ms. Green? That was a lot of ranting on my part.
Yeah, it's all great. The only thing that I want to touch base on is that make sure when you're looking at your FRQ that you've identified and described. So you identify the social consequence or an economic consequence, and then...
Yeah, perfect. Even though they're not saying identify and describe, it never, ever hurts to be very clear about what you're talking about, because it makes our job as a reader immensely easier. I also got a question from a student that said, would you recommend mentioning elderly dependency ratio in your answer? And if so, under social or economic. Yes, using vocab anytime is instant benefit, because when you use vocab, you're showing the reader that, wow, they do know what they're talking about. They know exactly what realm we're in. They know that we're talking about demographics. This kid clearly understands. So we'll be a little more giving with the points. Now, would I mention it under social or economic? Both. Why not? Drop the vocab everywhere. You know what I mean? It has a strain on economics, and it changes how society functions. Yeah, drop as much vocab as you can is the best thing to do. All right, I'm gonna move on to the next FRQ. We're looking at the rate of natural increase. This was a fantastic FRQ to do from, I think, 2018. The two questions you got was describe an economic incentive that a country with high population growth rate could use to decrease population growth, and a social program or policy that a country with high population growth rate could decrease their population. Okay, so how are we gonna implement economic incentives, and how are we gonna implement social policy to bring down birth rates in developing countries? So once again, even though it just says describe, it never hurts to identify what exactly you're talking about. Literally just writing out what you think and then explaining it. There's no format to the FRQs. This isn't an essay style question. This is just an extended response. You get to write however you want. So economic incentives, let's talk about them. Increasing the distribution, availability, and affordability of contraceptives. The key word here is distribution, availability, and most specifically affordability, because they're relating it back to the price of the contraceptives. And in your response, you can identify price of contraceptives and then explain dropping the price of these contraceptives would lead as an economic incentive for more people to use them, and you would get full points. Other ideas you could use are promoting economic development, reducing poverty, and creating sustainable development. Look, if you promote economic development, that specifically means towards women, right? And we know that these women are generally involved in agriculture. So if they could have more ability to control their agricultural profit or stake in the economy, they're not gonna have as many kids. And the kids that they do have, they're gonna send them to school, and then those kids will go do something else besides agriculture. Promoting female labor force participation or business ownership. Look, women work in the developing world. Let's be real. They might not be getting paid for it, but they work, whether it be on the farm or raising kids or doing both at the same time. The fact is, when we say labor force participation, we're saying paid labor force participation. How can we make sure that those women get control of those farms, how they can start making money off of the things that they do to then promote the country? And that's where we also get those microloans or microcredit, right? Where the developing world sends small amounts of money to thousands of women across the developing world in a hope to bring up the economic development. Of course, you could offer incentives for smaller families or disincentives for larger families, and that could be anything. Kids came up with the wildest stuff, you know, offering free money to families that only have 2 kids, or making families pay more in taxes, or offering some type of economic incentive like free childcare, or you know, I think Russia at one point said if you have a kid, we'll give you a refrigerator. Like, you could do anything. It doesn't matter on the economic incentive, as long as you had some type of economic incentive. You can get creative there. And then finally, implementing a government economic safety net to support the elderly. I don't know where to go with that one. I don't know how the elderly get involved. I would probably say because the elderly are taken care of, the younger people don't feel forced to have kids to make more money. I don't know. What do you think, Ms. Green?
Like, sorry, when we talked about this, wasn't it something about how, like, it had to tie into the amount of daycares and like elderly homes? I'm trying to think back. Yeah,
on this one, I mean, I would probably just go with that. I mean, look, guys, go with the easy answers. Why would you make it complicated and go for this anyway? Who cares if you write the same thing as thousands of other students, as long as you get it right? Just go for the easy stuff here. All right, moving on to social programs to decrease population growth. Now we're moving on to, you have to be specific here. You can't relate it back to money. It has to be something the government can implement socially. So the first one, promote family planning and reproductive health education. That is by far the easiest answer to go for. If you wrote anything along the lines of the government will have family planning education for every citizen, boom, you got points. You nailed it. It was easy. You could go with increasing education for girls and promoting higher education for women. That is not family planning education. That's not reproductive, contraceptive education. No, just education in general, sending girls to school and making sure that women who are educated can get further educated. All right, implementing antinatalist policies. Sure, you could say anything. Tons of kids like to write about the China one-child policy on this one. I wouldn't, because that's a case where too many kids wrote about it. But the idea that they're going to implement some type of way to limit the growth of families. Improving healthcare for women, infants, and children. Guys, if you improve the access to healthcare to women, that means that they go from, well, I'm going to have 7 kids and 3 of them might make it, to I know I can plan for just 2 and I know they're going to make it because we've dropped that infant mortality rate and we've increased the access to healthcare. Not the quality of healthcare, because quality of healthcare is enough everywhere. It's access, right? So we're dropping or we're increasing the access to healthcare and we're dropping that infant mortality rate. Producing media or ad campaigns showing the benefits of family planning. Look, guys, if you put that the government is going to start a propaganda campaign showing how great it is to have smaller families, nailed it. Kind of tougher answer. Wouldn't go for it as my first choice, but totally acceptable. Promoting urbanization. We know that when urban areas are developed, people are going to have less kids because it's smaller areas. They're not counting on agriculture work for their family's income. They're going to move to secondary labor working in factories. So they're just not going to be focused on having a ton of kids if they would living in a rural area. And then finally, probably the most confusing one, changing, implementing, or enforcing laws about increasing the minimum age of marriage. In the developing world, they don't always have laws on when people can get married, and sometimes those laws have very low ages. So that means those women are going to have more kids in their lifetime. And that's more of a cultural thing. So I saw that some students sent me some questions. Nope, someone just commenting about how amazing it is that Russia gave out refrigerators. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next one. I mean, it was amazing. It was pretty incredible. Now, looking at the population pyramids, this question was pretty straightforward, real easy. Just, can you read population pyramids? Explain the demographic characteristics of each country above with respect to the demographic transition model. Easy. Country A. Now, you did have to take a definitive stance on this. You can't say, oh, it's stage 3 and stage 4. No, you have to choose one. So make sure that you made that clear distinction. So country A, larger base, indicating that they are in earlier stages of the demographic transition model. It's safe to say that they are in the late part of stage 2. And this is shown by the massive amount of the young dependency ratio. Look at that 0 to 4. It's almost at 20% on the male side, or sorry, it is 20% on the male side and almost 20% on the female side. That means 40% of their population is ages 0 to 4. That's a huge youth dependency ratio, not counting the 5 to 9 or the 10 to 14 or the 15 to 19, who takes up a large part of the group of people that just can't work. Now, in the developing world, 15 to 19 is probably working, but the first 3 age groups we see are a massive amount of the population percentage. So it has to be in stage 2. Now, people might be living longer because you're in stage 2, but we still have massive amounts of population growth. We still have an incredibly high total fertility rate, and that's why we see that shape. Now, if the total fertility rate drops, that base will start to narrow in a little bit because people are overall having less kids. Now, if we look at country B, clearly stage 4 country, their population is evenly distributed between all age groups with little variety between male and female and different ages. There is a sizable amount of elderly people, especially that elderly dependency ratio. Look at me dropping vocab in here in my explanation. This indicates a longer life expectancy due to better social infrastructure and access to healthcare. So yeah, did I go overboard a little bit explaining this? Yeah, most definitely. But it never hurts to solidify your answer and drop some vocab in there. And it seems a little repetitive, but it assures the reader that you know exactly what you're talking about. Okay. So on to the last one, the selected refugee by country of origin. So this was really simple. We talked about refugees. These are people experiencing forced migration. And you can experience forced migration for social reasons, economic reasons, political reasons, environmental reasons, all of them can be examples for refugees, and that's what they were trying to get here. So going to run through this real quick. What are political reasons? Fear of losing their life, fear of political persecution, fear of political imprisonment, standing up against the government, or the government doesn't specifically like you, or forcibly evicted by the government or military. And we have seen an example of this with the Syrian refugee crisis. We've seen it with the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar when their villages were lit on fire and the government went, no, that wasn't us. They set fire to their own villages. That's being forcibly evicted. That's being pushed out of a country. That's being politically persecuted or imprisoned to leave a country, right? When the government is implementing these things. A social reason for refugees to flee their country, and that goes all into culture, guys. Is it tied to religion? Is it tied to language? Is it tied to your ethnicity? Is it tied to your race? Is it tied to your gender, your sexuality? All of these ideas can be socially persecuted to create refugees. We really see this when it comes to ethnic racial persecution, because we know ethnicity is a reflection of our culture. And generally, when people are forcibly evicting people based on ethnicity, that's where we use that word genocide. And that's probably the number one reason we see refugees. The third reason, environmental reasons why we see refugees, is natural disaster, right? Too much pollution, too much disease, or food insecurity. Something with the environment. Real easy points here. A lot of kids always get points on this one. All right, so that is the FRQs. Like I said, the answers will be posted if you didn't catch everything. If you have more questions, please feel free to message me on Remind. I know some of you are messaging me now. I will address those multiple choice questions in the end. But real quick, I'll let Miss Green say anything she wants to say before I address some of the general questions about the AP exam.
Yeah, everything is good. For my kids, I know we have a different due date than Mr. Bayer's kids, so I'm not going to, or for this week only, I'm not going to post the answers to all of this until probably either Saturday night or Sunday sometime. Mr. Bayer, I know that at some point, if you're just going to start reviewing general questions, that some kids may start signing off. But do we want to talk about possibly doing a Zoom on Monday for any kids that want extra help?
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So before you leave, and you're more than welcome to leave after this. But we didn't go really in depth on the packet and vocab and all that. If you want to be part of a smaller video session, I'm going to hold for students on Monday. We're going to do a Zoom where I can screen share the answers and we can talk specifically, and you can talk a little more. So if you want to be part of that, I'll say Monday at noon. I'll put the link out there, and in case anybody wants to, I'll hold a little video session and we'll talk about that. Cool, Miss Green?
Yep, and same thing for my kids. You guys can use this link, and I'll jump on too. So I'll be on Mr. Bayer's Zoom.
We'll all be there. This is for all students. Okay, so now I'm just going to answer general questions about the AP exam. You're more than welcome to sign off unless you want to stick around for them. So Zoe asked, on the AP website, it's saying FRQ3 and FRQ2. That's for us teachers. The three FRQs are different, and we know that FRQ1 is a no stimulus question. That's all they're referring to. They're saying that we're going to use FRQ2 and 3, the ones with stimulus, so you can be prepared for your students. Okay, and then asking the question, hey, I was interested in learning other stuff with the content, especially Unit 7. Are we going to be going over it? Can I upload anything? How about this? After the AP exam, we still have to cover content. So I think we'll probably go over Unit 7, but only the really interesting stuff, the stuff that actually affects you here in Tampa, because it's not so interesting to learn when we aren't there to learn with you. But I will try to create stuff where you can at least watch some videos, answer some questions, and go, wow, I learned about that thing. It's cool. I see it in real life, and we'll make it interesting. Okay, trying to go through here. Okay, and the other question was, what are we going to do after the AP exam? Plans aren't solidified. Probably cover content in a fun, interesting way about Tampa, but besides that, plans aren't in stone. I just want to make it to the AP exam and see you guys do well. After that, we could figure it out. But I will tell you, it's probably going to be a lot more lenient than it already is, because we don't want to stress you out after you've completed your exam. So I don't have any more questions from any students specifically about stuff after. I know I've gotten a couple questions about the multiple choice and FRQs, but I can answer those. Besides that, I think we're good. Are we good, Ms. Green?
Yep, we are good.
Okay, cool. All right, I will post next week's assignment probably Friday or Saturday. It'll be due on the coming up Friday. Same as always. Have a great day.